like to open this Monday's October 21st Facilities and Streets Committee meeting of the Westbrook City Council. We have several items on the agenda. The first one is amendments to Article 6, parking scofflaw ordinance, and updating some of the uniform traffic ordinance outdated language. And we also have Lincoln Rivers, Oak, Dunn, Haskell, and Forest Street signage and other issues that Mrs. Clerk is going to update us on. So the first item is the amendment to the Article 6. Do we have an update from Chief?
Councilor Turcotte. So the particular wording on the parking scofflaw ordinance language, the current language requires that the city via the police department notice somebody that is in violation of, I believe it's 4 parking tickets, send a letter and give them 30 days to respond. And operationally trying to clean the streets, especially during the winter time, but even during the regular better weather operations, having somebody to be in violation and typically excessively a lot more than 4 parking tickets, it's very ineffective to operate from the public safety side, from the police officers trying to clear the streets for our public services staff and for our fire department and other vehicles like tow trucks and responders that need to get down to some of these side streets where the violations are happening. Currently on our parking ticket itself, it informs the vehicle operator when they receive the ticket, they have 10 days to respond to either contest the ticket and go to court to argue their perspective as to why they should not have to pay the ticket or pay the fine within those 10 days. And comparing other local communities, I know specifically Portland, they allow for 3 tickets in that 10-day response time. So the general description of what the official wording is and the recommendations is to allow any citizen, operator of a motor vehicle, owner of a motor vehicle, to receive 3 parking violations for any amount of the fines, depending on whether it could be handicap, which is typically more expensive, to an expired meter or overtime parking, to three parking tickets in the 10 days after that 3rd ticket. They would only be eligible to be scoffed, as the term is in the law, if they're in violation a 4th time. So somebody could have 3 violations and never pay the tickets, and if they don't park illegally in the city of Westbrook again, we're not going to be taking enforcement action against them. It's strictly trying to focus on the repeat offenders and how they're impacting the traveling of our city streets. Most of them are small and neighborhood residential streets, and especially during the winter time when we have snowbanks that are even shrinking the size of the width of the streets. We're just looking for effective wording that allows my officers to take more timely action to address the issue.
I have a question, and perhaps you can expand on the history of this, but is there a reason why we had 4 to begin with and other communities differ? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. The wording is long before I came in 5 years ago.
Okay. Mr. Bryant, do you have any background on this?
I'll say we all inherited it. So we haven't addressed the structural language. What's being addressed here is basically the frequency, the number of violations that would trigger the vehicle to be impounded.
Do we have any comments or questions from the committee? Mr. Foley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did notice that it appears the last time the ordinance was revisited was in 1995 and in 2004, so I'm not sure. Clearly, it's been 15 years since the last time it was looked at, so it should be enough time for us to potentially look at a recommendation. But just to move this along, I think the chief's recommendation is appropriate, and I'd just like to make a motion that we refer the adjusted ordinance change to the City Council for consideration.
Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a second. And is this then up for a hand vote? To move it? I mean, to move it to the...
Yeah, you'd ask if anybody wants to speak to the motion, and then
Okay.
Just do a
Anyone wants
show of
to speak
hands.
to the motion? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I agree with this motion, as Councilor Foley suggested, and just to let you know, I do support the police department. If anything we can do to help them do their jobs better, please let us know. So this ordinance makes perfect sense, and if this will help you do your job better, then let's go for it. Thank you.
All right, so, any other comments? All those in favor for moving this? It is unanimous. All right, updating uniform traffic ordinance amendment, outdated language. Mr. Bryant?
Again, the chief is going to be reviewing this, or the chief of Jenny, I'm sorry. Our planning and code enforcement director is going to be reviewing this.
As part of Daniel Stevens' study of the downtown parking to look at some of the to look at some of the timed spaces we have in our downtown, we started to look at the schedule that we have in our uniform traffic ordinance and realized that in some cases it hasn't been updated since 1964. So we felt it was probably timely that we start to look through these and figure out if we have some signs that are stated in the ordinance that maybe they don't actually exist anymore. So staff currently is going to be working on this as soon as tomorrow. We've got a long meeting set aside to go through line by line to see what is truly current and what is really out of date, and also to update our municipal parking lots by putting the name designations versus what we have right now is just a letter designation. Additionally, there's some items such as bus stops that are stated within the uniform traffic ordinance that do not need to be in there anymore. And definitely some time parking spaces that are outdated based upon the descriptions of the businesses in which that they are located within the ordinance. So as soon as we come back to the council, we'll have a much cleaner ordinance for you to review and up to date with currently what we are regulating out in the community.
Thank you. I do have a question about the frequency of review of this. Is there perhaps a recommendation that Mr. Bryant can make about how frequently we should be looking at this?
Depending on the section, I mean, there are certain areas we visit with some frequency. There are others that, as Jenny said, we go back decades and haven't been touched. I think we should be doing periodic reviews of not just the traffic ordinance, but basically all of our ordinances. You know, I think something, probably no more frequent than 5 years, but certainly not 10. Simply to go through, if this is statutory changes, if there are other factors that change, it just reflect those. So I think we should try to shoot toward like somewhere in that 5 to 10 year range to have reviewed every.
And what would be the most appropriate mechanism for that?
I would think the council just, you know, through some formal request asking that the administration develop a schedule and a plan to periodically revisit ordinances so that over the course of 10 years we'll have revisited everything.
Okay. Would you like me to make that request now, or?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to request that formally.
We will have that on the next council agenda for council action.
Thank you. Do you have any comments or questions? Mr. Foley?
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment about your request. I think we find ourselves being reactionary with a lot of things, and there's a lot, not so much proactivity on it. I do know that there's only so much a planning director or staff can go over an amount of time, and I think in the time that Jenny has been here specifically, she's been trying to be proactive on a lot of things, bringing forth a lot of these changes, small changes to the planning board and stuff like that to revisit. So I appreciate the effort, and I hope the effort continues on a regular basis. So thank you for that proposal.
Thank you. Mr. Chow?
Yes, thank you. Through you to the administration, one of the concerns that I've heard is that there's like overnight parking at the CVS parking, I'm not sure what the municipal lot is over by the CVS. So basically during the winter time, sometimes we'll have cars that are parked there, seems like all winter long. I see that overnight parking is prohibited except for temporary exceptions. Does any of these changes, will they say that you just can't park there all winter long for your car? Or?
So part of the impetus of how we started down this road also was dealing with snow bans, and that we wanted to try to make life easier for public services and also for our police department in trying to enforce how to make sure that we have our public lots cleared in a timely manner, and that we don't end up with a situation where we have cars that are completely covered with snow and they jam up our lots. So part of our effort in what we are going to be bringing back to you are designated areas in which that we are going to have people parking during snow bans, and then a certain time frame in which that they need to be out. So that is something that we are going to be bringing back to you as part of this.
Okay, thank you.
So what are the next steps on this?
This is just an update. As I don't know, I missed the introduction of this, but Councilor Peoples, who, as we know, cannot be here this evening, had asked that we try to address all the items that are currently referred to and pending in her committee. And we're trying to do that. In some cases, it's just an update. In some cases, we have actual information to report back. But that's why you're going to see so many items this evening on this agenda.
Okay. Mr. Paul?
Thank you. So would it be appropriate to maybe refer this item to the council? The planning director has a lot of notes on the rough draft, I'm assuming it is, that she's going to refine.
Yep.
If other councilors are fine, I'm fine referring this to the council for consideration when a final draft is ready. To get it
That's
off the committee.
appropriate. I mean.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a second. Mr. Chow, second. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Lincoln Street speed study update. Who wants to start? Mr. Dudley.
Just to update the committee on that, I did make a request to Maine DOT Region 1 traffic engineer to do a review of the speed limit on Lincoln Street. Followed up with them recently. They are planning to do that work this fall, and promise to have that work done by the end of the year. So we'll have those results by January 1st.
Okay, thank you. Any updates from Ms. Clerk on this street? Okay. All right, are we okay to move to River Street? All right, River Street establishing a two-way street. Mr. Dudley?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll quickly introduce the item. Yeah, Mr. Dudley and I met with members of the River Street neighborhood in August of this year after receiving some concerns from residents, and specifically the neighborhood hub that's down there, the director of the neighborhood hub, about the fact that there's a lot of speeding cars and concern of traffic and stuff in that specific neighborhood. And Mr. Dudley studied the issue before we went and met with residents, and we met with residents, and Mr. Dudley proposed to that we try possibly making that street a two-way street. There's no real historical reason that he could find why that was a one-way street. So there's been at times that was acceptable by the residents. It may not be acceptable by the residents now, so we're not sure exactly. I know there's a number of residents here that we met with, but I'll ask Mr. Dudley to maybe explain more of the proposal as well.
Yeah, so again, a concern came to me earlier this year about a lot of cars maybe using the streets. So it's River and Reserve as two-way, although it's a one-way street. And one of the requests was to add signage on the street, which is difficult because if you look at each individual driveway, if people are pulling out, they're unfamiliar with the area, really for them to not make an error, you would need to have it posted quite frequently on that street. There's not a lot of places to do that as well. So I got looking at it and, measured the street widths, looked at everything and said, boy, I'm not really sure why it is one way. Really, one-ways are used if you have extremely narrow streets or in larger grid patterns. Let's say in New York City, you see a lot of one-way streets because you can actually put more traffic through a one-way street system where every other block alternates directions. You can actually push more volume through. So obviously, we're not trying to do that in this neighborhood. It's a pretty quiet, sleepy neighborhood. And so we just had that discussion. There seemed to be some interest from the folks there. There's some reservations from others about the concept. One of the things that we talked about doing is to do like a trial run, 6 or 9 months of doing it two-way. We would go and replace all the signage to allow it for two-way. See what people think afterwards. If there's a desire to bring it back to one way, we would probably do that. Or if people found that makes more sense and is more convenient, then we'd probably keep it two-way. Since that meeting, I've heard some concern that people might be maybe putting the brakes on that idea of going to two-way. So certainly it wasn't didn't bring this forward to freak the neighborhood out, but it seems like maybe some people are concerned about that concept.
Now, quick question on this, changing it back to, going to two-way and then changing it back. I mean, driving to a lot of people is memory, right? So
Right.
would that cause any traffic issues and accidents if you
Well,
do that?
Right, so we would do it, the way to do it, I mean, with construction projects, we do that all the time where we change the traffic patterns, for a period of time, and then obviously, so everything looks different because something's under construction, and then after construction, we go back to what it was, or maybe even a new traffic pattern. So the way you do that is, some advanced warning signage, letting people know, of the new traffic pattern. There's some things in the manual and uniform traffic control devices that we can deploy to help with that change, back and forth. There's always a risk with change. Again, it's really low volume streets over here. I don't think it's really that great of a risk. I truly believe, I wouldn't bring it forward if I didn't believe in this, but I truly believe it will work better as two-way streets, which is why I brought it forward to the neighborhood for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Go ahead.
Mr. Dudley, could you, for the public, which direction does that street, does it go towards north now? Or it goes towards north? So, back when the congregation was larger and we had 3 churches in the city and there was a lot of Catholics, and I think that was designed, and it may not have been, but when they got out in back of the parish, they could go either way quickly and they wouldn't have to worry about other cars. But I think since then, the number of vehicles are probably less. And is that street as wide as North?
North Street is extremely wide in that dead-end section from Brown down to the river.
Do you know how wide River is?
I had them measured, and I think, I don't want to misspeak, one of them was around 30 feet, and the other, I think, was in the range of 28 feet, what I measured.
Okay, because I know that further down here, there's Oak Street, and there's definitely smaller streets, and I know that the Oak that we'll be talking about, it was very challenging. If a car was parked on the street, plus there was a two-way, that it'd be really hard to navigate through there. So if we make it two-way, will there be no parking on the street?
So let's talk about that. So our standard for a new public street is 24 feet in width. That allows for parking on both sides of the street and two-way traffic. Park streets on the car absolutely do make it more difficult for cars to maneuver through a neighborhood, which also keeps speeds down. You really want to encourage on some level of on-street parking and a narrower street to create a safer neighborhood. When people get really wide, they tend to feel as though they can travel at a higher rate of speed. So we actually do want to create some inconvenience. That's one of the reasons why we did, back in 2003, go from a 26-foot wide public street down to a 24-foot wide. So far, we haven't seen any major issues with that. I know that there was a trial period. Brighton Farm was a contract zone, and prior to the ordinance change, those streets were made at 22 feet in width, and that doesn't work. that was discovered pretty quickly that 22 feet doesn't work. But 28, 30 feet, 32 feet, it's typically not a problem.
Madam Chair, if there's anyone from the public that lives in that neighborhood, I'd love to hear their comments.
Could you go up to a podium and introduce yourselves? Thank you for that opening.
Hi, my name's Don Villani. I live on Reserve Street, right on the corner. Initially, I'd sent an email to Mr. Ledoux back in the spring stating my concerns that the signage there was not even visible for people turning onto Reserve from Brown Street. It's actually on the opposite side of the road, so you wouldn't even notice it when you were turning. Thinking that proper signage down there might prevent people from going down into the corner and doing a U-turn and, maybe causing some problems with people coming out of their driveways, or a lot of kids down there playing now. Since there's been a lot of new buildings down on North Street, there's a lot of kids in that neighborhood now, and it's a real concern for us. Parking is also a concern, and if we make it two-way, I don't know if people will actually, in fact, lose parking. Snow removal down there at times, and I know it's difficult. Westbrook's grown a lot, and there's a lot of snow to be moved. But lots of times, it's like 6 feet out from the curb, so that's kind of narrowing the road itself. When we had the meeting with Eric and Mike, we talked about maybe making this a two-way, and at first we were thinking, it might not be a bad idea, but as we watched the traffic, especially going around the corner by the hub, it's people are cutting so close down there. I just don't know if, you've got 2 lanes going through there, how it will work. I mean, maybe doing it for a trial period might be worth looking at. But we just have a lot of concerns that, like I say, the signage is not there to begin with, so.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Ray Dragon. I live on 28 River Street. So I'm the house right by the hub. So when they put that yellow line in the middle of the road, so what happens now is people think it's a two-way. So what they do is they go around and they go up on the curb. I've stepped out my door and the car was right there where I had to pull my door in. My daughter sits on the steps, my children are there. It's really scary sometimes, What my suggestion was for the line was to go over further so they know where the parking is. And it kind of brings them closer to the thing. But my biggest thing was the stop sign. Why can't it just say exit? Because people don't realize you can get through North Street and go out. If it's the other way, people from North Street are coming our way now, and they're going to go up River Street and go that way, because they're not going to go by the school buses or any of that. So it's going to make us, you're talking 20 to 30 kids getting on a bus at a time. There's a lot of traffic there being held back. So what's going to happen, they're coming our way. So now you got traffic going both ways, your fire trucks, ambulances that come down that road a lot, more than you can imagine. It's scary. It is, I don't know. I just feel like when I walk out my door, I shouldn't be worried about someone coming up on my curb. And it happens more now than with that yellow line in the middle, because they're very confused. So, right, and my dog was just hit the other day. Not bad, but he did, because the girl, when she went around the corner, he was right there, standing there, which my kids have, they've always played right there. And luckily he just got nipped in the face, no big deal, but because they're going around that yellow line now, because they think it's a two-way, they're not paying attention to what else is going on, I think it's very confusing, is what it is for a lot of people. So, that's my thoughts.
Thank you very much, and
You're
sorry
welcome.
about your dog.
Yeah, luckily he's okay.
Mr. Dudley, do you have any comments on the yellow line and the response to that, or?
Oh, so just to respond, yeah. So we just installed that, I don't know, a few weeks ago. It really came out of the result of the neighborhood meeting. There was concerns raised about cars cutting the corner, and so the attempt was to place that solid yellow in the middle of the street, so that people would stay further away from that curb and not clip the corner. It's a situation where, you know, if people don't like it, again, that's something that'll just wear away. I mean, that'll be gone in the spring.
Right.
We would need to repaint it anyway, but we just placed it out there, just trying to help.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
We have one more person on River Street.
Hi, I'm Donna Merrifield. I live at 9 Reserve. It's the house on the right, and I'm the only single-family house on Reserve Street. I've been there 30 years, and it's always been a one-way down, and with the children in the neighborhood, I think it's really important. And also, if they do make this change, what happens up at, in front of the church at Brown Street? That will now become a three-way stop. It would have to. And that was something that I didn't hear, discussed. Now people come up, for us that live down in that neighborhood and have to take that, a lot of the cars cut to stay on Brown Street. They cut that corner, so if I'm stopped, I have to stop there and check before I turn down onto Reserve. A lot of times cars are already over into that lane. And I think if we had a three-way stop there, I could see some benefit for that, but I really don't like the two-way for that. That even if they say width-wise, I know I've seen vehicles on both sides of the street, and the emergency fire department come down there, and to make that turn, if there's cars parked on both sides,
Right.
I don't think fire trucks would have enough room to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so those were my concerns that weren't already mentioned.
Thank you. Do we have anyone from the committee would like to speak? Anyone else from the public? Madam Clerk?
So in preparation for tonight's council committee meeting, we did send out notice to all property owners on River Street via postcard, and this asked property owners to notify their tenants about this. In response to that notification, I did receive some emails and telephone calls, and I said that I would pass this information along to the committee. The first was an email from Brittany Sampson from the Community Partnership for Protecting Children. She's helped field some of the inquiries and questions that have been coming in. She's over at the Neighborhood Resource Hub. She mentioned that neighbors are expressing multiple concerns about safety as well as parking in reference to making this a two-way street on a trial period. Received a voicemail from Nicola McDowell over at 22 River Street, who is opposed to the two-way street on River Street. She said there are too many children and doesn't want to lose any sidewalk. I received an email from Patrick Conway, and it states, "My name is Patrick Conway, and I'm the owner of 28 River Street. I do not think that the street should become a two-way street, as it would be very dangerous for the residents. I purchased the house because a friend needed a safe place to raise her grandson. The position she was put in due to the opioid epidemic. Changing the road to a two-way would make the location unsuitable and dangerous for a young boy who has already been through so much. How dangerous it will become is evident from the line that was just painted down the middle of the street. Now vehicles drive up on the sidewalk while making the turn from Reserve onto River. I was told that a few days ago my friend was almost hit by a car and had to take the turn too wide as she stepped out her front door. I sincerely hope that it will not take someone getting run over for the city to realize that River Street needs to be one way." I received another phone call. This was from a teenager and her mother. The teenager named Marwa was stated that there were lots of kids on the streets and she'd prefer to keep it one way. Her mother stated that the street looks perfect the way it is as a one-way street. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion. I know that Eric and his team does a really, really great job. We do have a few one-way streets in the city, Dana Court, Obviously, Lamb Street is one way, only because you wouldn't want to come out on the main street. I think given some of the feedback from the neighbors, the original concern was people weren't observing the sign. And I don't think they wanted a two-way street. And given the nature of bus stops and things like that, I think that it would actually turn into more of an issue with people dodging the school buses. I know I live on a street where there's a school bus right by Severino's, and they go down my street. So I don't want to create another issue even for 9 months. So my stand on this will be to leave River Street a one-way. So I'd like to make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Just a friendly amendment and include additional signage for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Second motion. Do you have any discussion on the motion? No? All those in favor of the motion? It is unanimous. Mr. Bryan, do you have any parting comments? Okay.
One way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Duffy.
May I?
Yes.
I just need to say, the additional signage may not seem like a lot. We might put a sign up, an extra sign up, but it won't be much. It actually has adequate signage on the streets. People just don't always follow the rules.
Yep.
They don't read signs. But I will put something up, but it's not going to be a lot, just so people understand that.
I don't have the meeting. Sorry.
You can go ahead up to the podium. And can I just make a recommendation? If we do put a sign, if we could come back and discuss this at this committee, how things are going, if we're receiving any more complaints from the community.
My thought is, at the stop sign, why can't it just say exit? Just so they know that goes out, right there on North Street and River. If under the stop sign, if it said exit, so they know it goes that way, because that's where the problem is, people don't realize it goes all the way through. Right? So if it says exit, then they know you follow through.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right. Moving on. Oak Street, allowing parking on one side of the street. Would like to, I understand, Councilor Foley, you received this.
Oh, yes.
Would you like to speak
Yeah,
to it?
sure. I'll just quickly introduce. There was a gentleman, resident, Mr. Bruce Tuttle, who contacted us in June about potentially allowing some parking in the area, and I referred it on to the administration to study the issue with public safety folks. And I appreciate on this item and the last few items the work that the clerk did to prepare these items for action. I think sometimes we have items that come before the committee that don't have any history or staff review or proposals to resolve issues. So I appreciate the work that you did, and this issue hopefully has come to us resolved, and we can move forward with the request from the resident there.
Okay. Any other comments?
So,
Yeah.
so right now, from Oak to Seavey, would be, you're recommending that you could park on both sides? Yes, Madam Clerk?
From
Just
Lamb to Seavey.
for those who are at home, to make sure that we're going through this. So currently, parking is prohibited on both sides of Oak Street between Seavey and Forest, and there's a map included that's listed in red. Parking is currently allowed on both sides of Oak Street between Forest and Berkeley, which is in green on the map. City staff, after reviewing this, were recommending that we allow parking on one side of Oak Street between Seavey and Lamb only, which is marked in a dotted yellow line. Staff indicated no preference which side should be designated as the no parking zone, and are presenting this to the committee for discussion.
Okay. Well, it just kind of threw me where I saw the dotted lines on both sides. I'm cool with just one side in that area, because it is a rather, even though it does meet the specs of a street, I believe it's from the other half of Oak Street, it's 6 feet narrower. I went out and actually measured them from Berkeley to Forest and from Forest to Seavey. And the Seavey, the red end is 6 feet narrower. So I would recommend just parking on one side.
Any other comments from the committee? Mr. Wolf?
I'll move forward the recommendation that the staff has proposed.
Okay, thank you very much, but could we open it to a public? Any other comments from the public? Okay, so we have a motion.
No.
Madam Clerk?
Staff had not indicated a preference as to which side of the street should be made parking allowed, I guess. So the question would be for the committee, do you have a preference as to which side of the street should be made?
Same amount of houses.
We should allow parking on?
Do we have a preference? No? Yes.
I recall that I had forwarded you the preference by the resident there. I forget what it was, though. I can
Look back.
look back in the notes.
Do we want to wait for that?
They could have that recommendation when the council acts
Yep,
on
when we
it.
bring it forward, it will let us know and we'll reflect that recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion,
Because-
we have a second. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. And by the time of the council meeting, we'll have that resolved, which side. Okay, thank you very much. Dunn Street, establishing a no parking zone. This is a referral, Public Services and Police Department. Who would like to speak on this street?
I will step up.
Okay.
Councilor Turcott.
Thank you.
So this issue was brought to Public Services and the Police Department's attention via one of the residents that was having a difficult time last late winter, early spring, trying to navigate the intersection of Dunn Street at Main Street. We obviously brought it to committee before. Committee pushed it back to the staff to do a little more research after at least one of the residents came and spoke against the change. What we are recommending now is the last piece of Dunn Street that runs adjacent to the public parking lot that's part of the Dunn Street Legion and the entrance to the park, from that edge to the end, the dead-end section of the street where the walking path is along the river, for that particular section to be no parking on one side. Width-wise, that end of the street is much thinner. I don't have the exact measurements. I do know that from the police side, the other end of the street from Main Street to the parking lot, routine travel with cruisers is not a problem. Chief Turcott, who is not here, still, I believe, had some concerns about trying to get a ladder truck down around that corner. However, I think that ultimately having access to that particular section of the street by other means would also work for their purposes and needs. So we've modified our recommendation to be just the dead-end section, the short section that's much thinner.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? Mr. Chow?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I read your proposal. I think it's, I believe in this one. The last one I was not in favor of. I think this works out pretty good. There is the issue of, there's some bushes on Main Street. I don't know who's in charge of that, but the bushes, when you leave Dunn Street and you look left towards Sappy, it's hard to see. And I don't know if it's public-private property. I don't know where the city's jurisdiction is on that, but it's hard to take a left out of that area.
Mr. Dudley?
That's private property.
Right, so
We have no jurisdiction over it.
Okay, all right,
And we did approach the property owner,
Yep.
as was requested by the council,
okay,
by the committee, I should say.
okay, thank you.
And they were not willing to cut them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Mr.
Phil Spiller, and I'm the building chairman of the Dunn Street Legion. We appreciate the modification, Chief. Thank you for that, and we are in favor of that modification and approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Make a motion to move the recommendation.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? None? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. I believe Haskell Street is next, and Councilor Chow.
Yes.
For the referral.
Yes, thank you. So I've been approached that Haskell Street seems to be a main cut-through street, and people are driving a million miles an hour just through that street trying to cut around the traffic. So one of the troubles that we're having in Westbrook is that we seem to be a drive-through town, and people are speeding out of Portland trying to get home to wherever they live, and maybe not Westbrook, I don't know where they live, but they're speeding through all our residential streets trying to get home faster. And I know that Portland had this trouble in between Congress and Brighton, and almost every street there has multiple speed bumps trying to slow them down. And I quite frankly, like Pierce Street in Westbrook, I just don't go down Pierce Street unless I really have to, because there's so many speed bumps, it's just not worth the hassle. Haskell Street, kind of the same way. People are driving so fast down these streets. Residents are screaming for action. They want us to do something. Right now, if you could, the proposal seems like, so right now currently we're paving Haskell Street. Is that correct? Yeah. And then we're also removing a sidewalk. So is that if Mr. Dudley could explain what's going on with Haskell Street, that would be good.
So we're repaving a section of Haskell Street from Pine to Forest. Basically, I don't know if you guys, well, maybe some people here live in the neighborhood, and so that they know what it's like every winter. Recently, trying to travel on that street, it's even difficult for us to plow. It's been in such poor condition. So, Artie's been working on a project for far too long. I think we've struggled on this one. There's a lot of complications on Haskell Street that have made even just this resurfacing project difficult. But we're reclaiming it, putting in some cement additive to strengthen the sub-base, and then resurfacing that section of the street right now. There are two small sections of sidewalk that don't really connect to anything. That as part of the resurfacing project we were planning to remove. They're not passable, haven't been for probably decades, and really don't make any connection from one location to another. So our plan is to remove those.
Okay. I typically know that when you repave a road, it's all shiny and smooth. Yep. I think people want to see how fast their car goes. Is there any plans to remedy the speeding and the cut-throughs? Or?
Well, so one of the things I wanted to do on Haskell Street itself is to do a speed study. I'm going to conduct a speed study. I wanted to do it after we pave, though, because I would expect that in that section between Pine and Forest, the speed will increase, because you can't even, prior to the project, I don't believe you could travel the speed limit if you cared about, your repair bills on your vehicle or your teeth. But so that's one of the things I'm going to do, is actually do a speed study to see what we have for 85th percentile speed, and whether or not there are mitigation efforts needed.
Okay, so currently people are driving slower because the road is in such poor shape. Is that correct?
That section from Pine to Forest, yeah.
And then doing a speed study, I know that on Stroudwater Street, that we had one of my constituents recommended he wanted a speed study, and the council said, yeah, we'll do it. We don't care. So the state came in and they actually recommended making Stroudwater Street go faster, 10 miles,
Right.
10. Ever since then, I do not want any more speed studies, because it did not go the way I wanted. So, yes, go ahead.
If I may, two different things. So that's a speed limit study.
Yeah.
So that's conducted by Maine DOT, and that's where you can run into that situation. I'm just talking about a speed study where I go out and spend some time, collect some speed data on the vehicles traveling at free flow, compile that, and then make a determination on what the design, it's called the 85th percentile speed. I know it's awkward, but so we get an idea, an indication of what the speeds are on that road. The 85th percentile basically is the driver to say people driving at or below that speed are driving prudently on a roadway. So let's say, so the expectation should be that the 85th percentile speed should be pretty close to 25 on Haskell Street. If we find, it's 35, well, we might have a problem. If we find that it's 26, 27, well, that's pretty typical. I don't think anyone here would expect to get a speeding ticket if they're going 2 miles per hour over the speed limit. So, once we do this paving work, I am gonna spend some time to do that.
Okay, so after, if we, let's say that people are going 35 down the street, then what do we do? Do we mitigate after we did all the work, or does it make sense to mitigate before, or?
Well, I mean, what do you want for mitigation? I mean, there's anything that you do for mitigation of speed, you do after the fact, typically anyway. With the structure of the roadway as it is on Haskell Street, to do any real intensive, speed mitigation would require reconstructing the whole street. I mean, you can put speed tables in on Haskell Street easily. You could do some things along those lines, and those are intrusive. They work. They can be tough to live with. But to do things like curb extensions and things of that nature, you really need to rebuild the street, make it all enclosed storm drain and that sort of thing. So it's really not, we're just trying to get to the point where people can pass safely on the street, not damage their vehicles and that sort of thing. We're not out fixing potholes every 2 days this winter.
Right.
So that's what we're doing out there right now.
Yeah, because the main concern of bringing this committee was to mitigate the speeding. Is there any residents that would like to talk about the Haskell?
Go ahead.
My name's Evan Justice. I'm at 173 Haskell Street. And with all due respect, the condition of the road prior to repaving, they were still going just as fast as they've been going for the last 15 years that I've lived there. This is a conversation that's gone on for at least 10 years. The normal times that they're doing 35 to 50 miles an hour, and I work from home, so I see it all day long. I look out my window, I hear them coming down the road. 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then from 6 in the evening to 10 in the evening. They're 50 miles an hour is not unusual. I've picked up 2 of my pets out of the street after being hit. That's nothing until you have a kid that goes to chase a ball that gets hit. And there's going to be a big problem at some point in time. Speed bumps, better signage, even though the radar-linked speed limit signs, even though people know that they're kind of a joke, they do work. I would suggest that we just spent $6,000 on radar guns. Instead of spending the money on a study, have police officers sit there during those times and give out some tickets. And with all due respect to the police department, in the 15 years that I've lived on the street, I can remember maybe 2 or 3 times seeing people being pulled over for speeding. I know it's a thoroughfare for emergency vehicles and the police department, I get that, but we need to slow it down somehow or another. And a speed study that goes through spring, then winter, or fall, through winter, into spring again, something, I think it's just going to be put to the wayside. I think something needs to be done relatively quick. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Go ahead.
Dennis Marat, Falmouth Street. I will admit I do not live on Haskell or Rochester, but I sometimes use both of those streets. They are parallel streets off of Forest Street. If you're coming down Larrabee Road, I'm just curious if either one of those streets are rebuilt in coordination with the reconstruction of the Cumberland Mills Triangle, whenever that's supposed to start, if Haskell and Rochester are going to be used as temporary detours, depending on the status of the construction and rebuilding of the Cumberland Mills Triangle. If you think you've got traffic now on Haskell and Rochester, wait until Cumberland Mills Triangle work starts. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Dudley.
Yeah, if I could just respond. So most of the work that's going to be done as part of that triangle project is really done adjacent to traffic. It's going to be in islands, and there's going to be lane shifts and that sort of thing, but really you shouldn't see much interruption during construction. So there are no planned detours for the project. Probably the most intrusive will be we are doing a municipal partnership incentive project to resurface the Cumberland Mills Triangle in conjunction with the larger project, and we're also rebuilding those sidewalks in that neighborhood as part of that. So.
Thank you. We have one more public comment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Newville. I live at 145 Haskell Street. It is at the corner of Lawrence and Haskell. Lawrence is a bus stop for both high school and younger kids. That is also the street that connects to the walk that goes over 25. So high school kids also walk to school that way as well. I've done some work to cut back my hedge and also thin it out so that it's more visible, as I've seen kids riding their bikes down the street and almost get taken out many times. So it's, to reiterate, there might be a chance where a kid could get taken out on that street at some point. So there is a safety issue. The city's actually been really great. I had a couple trees that actually split apart during windstorm a couple years ago. Doug Eaton took the trees down. That really cleared up visibility. But the speed actually even increased once the trees were down, which was really interesting. Yes, the speed does go, even with the repaving. Nervous, it's really weird. With the repaving, I do expect that the speed will increase, regardless of the bumps in the road. I actually would turn into Haskell to get home from work. I go about 17 miles per hour. I actually recommend about a 20 mile per hour on that street. One thing that I want to consider as well is, let's be forward thinking. We have Rock Road being developed. And what I know of the area of being a resident is that people drive through Haskell Street because they don't want to take the turn at the police station, the fire station, to get to 25. They want to also get to Stroudwater, so they can get to IDEX, that's where I work. They can get to other areas, so they're going to cut down through there, they're going to speed. And I see it every day. As Rock Road gets more and more developed, people are going to cut through to get to Market Basket or any of the other developments that are going to go in there. So the speed is only going to get worse. The traffic is only going to increase. So that is a larger safety issue. I have asked for sidewalks to be installed. There's actually a sidewalk that was crumbling in front of my house that was taken out when they replaced the trees. Looks fine, as long as people are safe to walk their dogs and their kids and everything down the street. I see it every day, people just walking. So the risk right now is that it's not really a neighborhood anymore. It's a thoroughfare. So I live in a community and I'm buying a house and I'm fixing up a house that is not part of a neighborhood. And that's what we need to make it, is to make sure that I can connect with my neighbors. The kids can play in the street. They can ride their bikes, they can walk their dogs. And it's not, we don't have that capability to do that right now. So we do need to mitigate the speed. I don't know if I have a time limit. I have contacted the police many times. They have pulled some people over. Solves the issue for a little bit and then the police disappear. That's fine, they're very busy. Thank you for everything you're doing, I really appreciate it. But if they just sat there maybe at the corner of Haskell and Lawrence, they make their budget in, I don't know, no time. The other thing to make you folks aware of is there's a stop sign at Pine Street and Haskell. People just blow through that stop sign, they don't even stop. So I sit there, I take the trash cans out, I let the dogs out the front door. They're blowing through the stop sign, they're not even stopping. So my recommendation is to add a second stop sign at the corner of Lawrence and Haskell. That I know will stop traffic for a little bit. Studies also show that if you add a stop sign, people just speed up in increments between stop signs. Speed bumps are not great for plows, but there are grooves that you can cut into the street, maybe street painting, slow kids, things like that. So if it's not going to be signage or anything like that, street painting, reflective paint, reflective something. Crosswalks at the intersection of Pine and Haskell, blinking stop signs, so people actually know, hey, there's a stop sign here, I'm not going to blow through it. Anything like that will really help the neighborhood actually feel like a neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Angela? Angel?
I had one email on this subject to read into the record. This was from Larry Bruni, who is a resident of the street. His email says, the only feedback I have is that while it's great that the road will be resurfaced, it's definitely needed. I fear that the incidences of speeding will only increase as a result. An additional stop sign, though likely to be rolled through or ignored as the current one is, will at least slow the traffic. This seems like a cheap alternative to adding sidewalks. Speed bumps could also be considered. Larry Bruni.
Thank you. And Chief?
Yes, Councilor Turcotte. Historical information, this is actually from May of 2016 when we installed our Speed Spy radar measurement device on the street for a complaint that was back then. It was posted for a total of 36 hours. The average speed was 25 miles an hour. The higher speed was measured at 51. The 85th percentile speed was 29 miles per hour. So basically from 25 to 30 miles an hour, that first 5 over was over 250 vehicles. And then the remaining from 31, so there's 61 people from 31 to 35 are vehicles, 9 from 36 to 40, 3 from 41 to 45, 1 from 46 to 50, and 1 from 51. And that's just 36 hours. I'll be the first one to admit, because I hear about it, if not daily, weekly, that we have a traffic issue in the city of Westbrook. It is the #1 public safety concern for the average resident. Realizing that and knowing that we as an agency have not been effective in truly impacting any particular street, and you have complaints on these side residential streets. Imagine if you live on Spring Street or Saco Street or Bridge Street where the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and not only the people that are commuting through our community to get to their own homes, but people that live in the city of Westbrook. We don't get a lot of voluntary compliance, people. Probably doesn't surprise you. So I just want to educate not only the residents that are concerned about their street on Haskell Street, but the council and the larger public that we as a department are looking at structuring our approach to traffic enforcement to be more focused, to truly spend some time on a particular problem location, whether it's speeding or it's crosswalks or it's red lights, stop signs, whatever the situation is. Historically, again, since I've been here in 5 years, my offices make right around 9,000 traffic stops a year. And I have a total of, at best case, fully staffed and healthy, about 35 officers around the clock. And that's not everybody in patrol. So as we educated the counselors last winter, my average shift is 3 officers on the street, citywide. 4 officers from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. The city, in support of us, counselors and the mayor, administrator, I thank you very much. We've started increasing the staffing to deal with the current, not only traffic issues, but calls for service increases that we're seeing, and be able to maintain and continue to do the community policing work that my offices do that have a true strong impact in the community across our youth to our elderly, our businesses, our residences, and everywhere, but anybody in between. I want to tell the public, I hear you. And with the limited resources we have, we're trying to not only do the enforcement piece, but we're going to be doing some PSAs and some other educational efforts to gain voluntary compliance and really put, so to speak, a full court press, but doing it not just for a month, doing it as a change in how we do traffic enforcement. We'll still be doing enforcement on any street in the city that my officers are on seeing a violation, at the same time trying to do some traffic enforcement posts for periods of time, structured and focused on key areas, and also continuing to work with public services around the traffic study, because sometimes in the big picture of public safety, some of our streets do not have a true traffic issue. They have a perception issue, and understand it. I've lived on residential streets the bulk of my life, and perception of what's 26 over when your child plays on the street versus what's 18 over look differently when you have personal emotional investments. That's just a fact of life. I don't mean to be critical in that statement, but how we can partner with you to, one, first determine is there a true issue, and then what can we do engineer-wise and resources-wise from the police department that we can do within the limited city's resources. How you can partner with us to educate your neighbors and yourselves so you aren't being part of the problem when you are not necessarily paying the best attention to driving, because we all do that. We're all imperfect human beings, including myself. It happens. When we catch ourselves, it's always good to slow down, though. And then figure out how we can most effectively impact this. But thank you for my little ramble. Just wanted to provide some information I don't think that the public per se has around what our past efforts have been and where we're focusing on going forward.
Thank you very much. And one of the problem streets or streets that I keep hearing about is Huntress, and we did a speed study on Huntress, and it appears to be a perception issue because of the proximity of the school. And my kids went to that school, and I was overwhelmed by how fast people were going. But from the numbers, it appears that it's not as bad of an issue. So what is our next step on this specific one?
I think you need to speak to the
You gotta go to
public,
the
or we
mic,
can have
please.
a side conversation, sir. It's one of the others.
I'm just curious where the camera you talked about was placed.
I'm not sure that I'm going to have that exactly in my email. It just says on Haskell Street.
Okay, because there's one side of Haskell that seems to be more of a problem than the other, just so you know. And it's the side, the Forest Street side seems to be more so than coming in, because the Main Street side, you have a hill to go up, plus it's a little bit more congested in that area with cars, and it widens up a bit at that end, and that's where I think you and I both are seeing the problem.
Councilor Foley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the chief made many valid points in her outline. I think one of the big concerns that we have in this community is traffic all over the place. We had five or six of them right here, and in my entire 16 years of service, it's been the #1 issue that the city has faced. And nearly a decade ago, we worked with the police department and the administration in our budget process back then to create a traffic enforcement officer position. I think the chief mentioned about expanding our force and police officers in the community to serve. We have the same amount of patrol officers since the 1980s that are actually on our streets. We need more police officers at the end of the day, and it is hard to do that in a way we're trying to use our resources wisely. But I think at the end of the day, we need more. We were able to add some more this year, but I think we need to work to create a traffic enforcement division in this community. We are a cut-through community, and people all over this region cut through our community every single day, and a lot of times they're the biggest offenders because they're not here living in our community. So I think we need to work to create a traffic enforcement division. The city of Biddeford has a traffic enforcement division. It's known you don't speed in Biddeford. And when we first created our traffic enforcement officer position, there was a lot of talk around the region about Westbrook being tough on traffic, but that one officer can only work so many days and can only attend so many places and be in everywhere at once. So I think we need to work on trying to definitely do that over time. It's not something we're going to fix overnight, but I think Mr. Newville presented some very good specific ideas. Specifically, I think the stop sign at the other street that you mentioned would be very helpful. I think what we need to do is probably keep this item before the committee and have Mr. Dudley do the speed study that he's just going to do. We're not paying anybody to do it. He's going to do it and study, just like he's going to tell us about the one that he did on 4th Street in a moment, where he'll study the traffic, and we will hear from him what the speeds are and maybe some recommendations on improvements for the street ultimately. So I hope we can keep this item before. Sorry to waste everyone's time to come out here without a specific solution today, but I think ultimately, given that the street's going through some transition, I think it would be best to study that after and see what we can do in the long term. But I definitely think there's some valid improvements we can make from a staffing perspective as well as from an infrastructure perspective that can hopefully be a happy medium. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Chow.
Yes, so this item's been presented to me. I've been on council for 10 years, and I keep hearing about this. I keep begging. To me, the answer is speed bumps. I want to speed bump everything, and it's probably not the best answer. Mr. Dudley has explained to me why we can't put speed bumps all over Westbrook. Anyways, I would like to do that because I get so many emails and calls about speeding. I hope not to see this go away. People, most of my residents, the constituents understand that we can't have a policeman at every corner, but a lot of they understand that, and they understand that it's not possible, but they do want an engineering aspects, speed bumps, signs, stop signs, flashing lights, some sort of thing to indicate how fast you're going. I thank all the residents for being so patient. And we're still trying to get through this answer. I'm hoping that it won't take much longer. We're going to do a speed study soon. I would like to make sure that we're not forgotten, and that something is being done. They keep asking me, and I keep forwarding it, and I'm waiting for an answer. I don't know if there's a great answer, but hopefully we'll get there. And we should have a conversation about all those streets, Haskell, Rochester. We're going to talk about Forest next, so thank you.
Thank you. All right. No other comments on this item? Okay, thank you very much. We're moving to Forest Street signage and speed control. It appears to be an old issue initiated by former Councilor Riley. Thank you. And Mr. Bryant?
Yeah, this one's been around a long time. Yeah, they talk, the Haskell Street talked about it. I mean, this was a major issue. I think Mr. Spill referred that I've been here 18 years, and this was an issue when I got here. And it's not been adequately addressed. We've looked at a lot of different options, looking at changing the speed limit. And I think I explained to everybody what Victor Chow, Councilor Chow, excuse me, talked about. If we ask for a speed study from the state to change the speed limit, the answer we likely will get is, you can change it, you can increase it. That doesn't serve anybody's purpose. We've talked about speed tables 15 years ago, and the residents opposed it. That may have changed. The additional challenge for Forest Street, beyond what we can do on Haskell, is it is a state designated highway. Eric can give you that classification, but basically, by design, Forest Street is a cut-through street, and unfortunately, it's through a residential neighborhood, that makes it that limits our options on what we can do to slow traffic down, and that's part of the reason why we're still dealing with the issue 15 years later.
Okay. Any comments on this? Questions? Any comments from the public? Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Lee Murbeck, and I live on Forest Street. And I have a dog, and I've lived there a long time. And I think some crosswalks and some stop signs would be very helpful on Forest Street.
Thank you very much.
we've almost gotten clipped quite a few times in the years that I've lived there, and it's not all the time, but I think we do need some kind of way to slow down. There are people that are going through there 50, 55 miles an hour, and it's just not, it's not acceptable. It's not pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dudley, do you have any comments on the, I see that you prepared a letter, and one of your recommendations was to do a speed limit study.
Well, so I would not necessarily recommend a speed limit study. I mean, we could, but I can tell you the speed limit's going to go up. So I just want to recap a little some things. So currently, Forest Street is posted 25 mile per hour. Those are an illegal posting. It should be unposted 25 miles per hour. You need to have a full speed limit study done by Maine DOT in order to post a speed limit. And if we were to do that, the speed would increase. I did a speed study back in June and July. What I came up with from that speed study is an 85th percentile speed of 34 miles per hour. So what we know is that DOT feels that the street should be posted at least at 30 miles per hour. We have 85th percentile speed that's about 4 miles per hour above that. I think the highest rated speed I got during this study was 39. And I'm not going to name any names, but a couple of people surprised me because I'm out there actually with a radar gun picking the speeds up, and
Wasn't me.
They weren't someone from away, I can tell you that.
They weren't from away. They weren't from away. Nobody here. I know that. So, and the other thing is, actually, I had a South Portland school bus. They were from away.
They're from away, yeah.
They were from away. They must have been going to some sort of sporting event. But they actually did 32 miles per hour on the street. The school bus did in South Portland. Anyway, I also looked at the crashes from 2013 through 2018. I think there's 7 crashes that have occurred on Forest Street. Nothing consistent. There was nothing consistent where I could say, boy, if we improved X, Y, Z, we could eliminate some of these crashes. But, one was a low-speed accident where a roll-off truck was dropping off a roll-off dumpster, and so the nose of the truck was kind of out in the street, and a driver was coming up the street, and they tried to drive around the front and actually clip the bumper. There was an OUI. There was a 19-year-old distracted driver who hit a parked car. These aren't things that we can fix by changing the road. There was one that was a failure to yield at Rochester and Forest. That was the only one at that intersection, though. Was that failure to yield. They both stopped, but one decided they were going to go, but it wasn't their turn. A couple of them were weather-related, icy road conditions, things like that. So, I guess when I boil out the sap, it seems like the road's functioning pretty much as it should. Speed's maybe a little bit higher than anyone would like. But again, a 30 mile per hour expected speed limit versus 34 miles per hour, the 85th percentile, it's a little bit high. But to give you an example, Pierce Street, right? Famous street, has speed tables, up and down the street. That was a posted 25 miles per hour legally. And in the 85th percentile speed when we tested that was 38 before the speed tables. 13 miles per hour over the legally posted speed limit. that's why we took that kind of action on that. So I don't have good answers, other than it appears to be working pretty well. I like the comment about crosswalks. We could look at that about crosswalks. The only concern I have is where do we put them? But maybe some signed crosswalks would be good. Stop signs there's not going to be a stop sign place other than at Rochester Street. This is a state aid road. And just so everyone, just to go back to Pine and Haskell, that's an unwarranted stop sign. The reason why people are driving through it is just not supposed to be there. People don't expect to have to stop there. Placing more, it creates a liability on the city. But DOT wouldn't allow us to put a stop sign, an unwarranted stop sign. They would come to town and tell us to remove it. I was sort of like out on Allen Avenue. I remember 15 years ago. The city of Portland put up a traffic signal, and Mayor Chaluta was on the phone to me the day he saw it, and he was upset because he had wanted a traffic signal somewhere. I can't remember where. It doesn't matter. And I explained to him we had done the studies, didn't meet warrants, we couldn't put it in, and then he's like, if that intersection meets warrants, I don't see how this other one in Westbrook doesn't. So I made some phone calls to the city of Portland. They're like, oh yeah, we're in trouble. We were forced to do it. And that's why it's been on flash ever since. So so they do get a little upset when we do things like that. So so we wouldn't be able to put stop signs, but crosswalks, some signed crosswalks in some strategic locations, I mean, that could be good. I think that might be a good approach. Maybe give everybody, the pedestrians, more opportunity to make crossings.
And I'm looking at the map right now. I from that I wouldn't make recommendations, but I would seek commentary from the folks that live on the street to get some insight into where that crosswalk might be helpful. I know we have one public comment. Go right ahead.
Hi, John Lynch at 139 Forest Street. We moved in about a year and a half ago, and the speed's been an issue on both directions of traffic between Rochester and Main Street consistently, and I don't believe there's a single crosswalk. And even just taking our dog out for a walk, it's honestly a challenge at times to cross the street. And you may say that the speed limit by your speed studies only shows whatever the statistics come out, but if you stand there, like we were cleaning the leaves on the front lawn the other day, and you could feel, like just a sedan going by, not even a pickup truck or an SUV, that you could actually feel, the force of the car going by, and that's not a 35-mile-an-hour car. So even if it's just 2 or 3 per hour that are going that fast, there's kids, there's cats, there's people walking dogs. There's no crosswalks, there's no speed bumps, there's no stop signs. It's basically like a Fast and the Furious straightaway for some people, and you could see it, like, the second they cross Main Street heading down Forest, you could hear a car rumbling. And coming from the other direction, they know between that Rochester stop sign and heading in the other direction, there's nothing but that railroad tracks that they might have to slow down so they don't bottom out. But anything, speed bumps or crosswalks would definitely help. And I don't know, because of the designation, if you could have one of those radar speed trackers just to say, hey, your speed is X, Y, and Z, and then maybe at the halfway point between the stretch, and it might just give people that extra second to slow down. Since we've been there, just the stretch between the railroad and Main Street, there's been several crashes, or minor or major, that we've witnessed, and that's only in half of the stretch that's in question. And the other thing is we have a neighbor across the street who wanted to be here tonight but couldn't. He's wheelchair bound, and he had concerns about the sidewalks because we recognize that some blocks don't have any sidewalks, but some that do, they're not compliant. This is per him, the research he did. So there's times where if he wants to go around the neighborhood, he has to dip down into the actual street. And if there's a car parked and then the sidewalk's not accessible, he's almost got clipped a few times, he said, in the last few weeks, because then he has to go around the car that's parked on the street. And with the speeding, it's just adding to the threat. And even if there wasn't a speeding issue, it's still a safety issue as a whole. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to say that.
Could we address the ADA concern while we're doing that sidewalk conversation as well?
Yeah. So yes. The short answer is we will. We're going all through the city, I actually know the neighbor. We were over there assessing his tree last week before, something like that. And so he didn't bring that up to me, but I'm sure it's the same person. And but yeah, that absolutely is a priority. We can
thank
work on that. Yeah.
To you, to Eric, would it be beneficial or acceptable? I know that in the Maria Huntress's front yard, there's a 25-mile-an-hour sign. I don't believe in, like I think you said, that it's an unmarked road. Would it be beneficial to have additional so that you have young kids that are going from the high school, traveling, and they're thinking twice about seeing that sign rather than just the one in the beginning and then going? Because oftentimes a road changes and, you know, you see, once you're over that hump, you can see the tracks and you just go. But possibly if there's additional signs of what the speed is, I don't know if that would be a good compromise, or at least make someone think. I know that we talked about having the flashing, you know, how fast you're going, but to see a sign possibly might help.
So I actually, the gentleman who brought up the idea of about a radar sign, that we can actually install. We'd have to purchase one and install it and that sort of thing. I think that makes sense. We can actually put those up because they're advisory.
Right.
We're not putting up additional speed limit signs. We're already in violation.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So by those signs,
that was my question.
Those
I
signs
didn't
there,
know.
we've actually been asked to remove.
Okay.
But we're not removing them. But I can't put new ones back. New ones in place. But an advisory sign, a radar advisory sign that, you know, and we, you know, everybody's learned from these that you cut it off at a certain speed because some people want to see how high they can get it to read.
Yeah.
So you cut it off at, say, 35 miles per hour, so that you kind of do away with that element. But
And
yeah,
I
something
think
like that
there's one
could work.
on the other side of the turnpike on Strawwater, and, you know,
Yeah,
you
in
do
Portland.
see it and say, "Whoa, I got to slow down." You know, you're thinking about where you're going to be, and I think that would be a fairly good compromise. I see a lot of people's heads shaking, and it'd be interesting to see what one of those would cost.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good
We
idea.
may have a few cans,
Oh,
bottle
yeah.
cans that we
I
can
mean-
cash in, and I'm all set, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Childs. I live on the Deer Hill area on Tolman Street, and I've commuted with my kids to the middle school and high school for 19 years. Both of my kids went to a daycare in the middle of Forest Street over the years, and just most of these conversations, including the conversation on about Haskell Street, I think we need to take a kind of step back a little bit. They've all touched on issues. We are a commuter, a cut-through community, but I think a lot of the we can learn a lot from watching what Portland went through. They tried to enact about 15 years ago a traffic calming protocol throughout the city. I believe you brought it up. Capissick Street was one of the first ones where they did it's called a vertical calming implementation, where they put a rotary in the middle of the road, widen the curbs, and make you have to vertically change direction and slow down to get through it. That lasted, I think it was until first snowfall, when Public Works ripped the whole thing out. I mean, it was a waste of $15,000 what they tried. They did speed bumps on Stevens Ave, which drove the traffic to the side streets, and then they had to put speed bumps on the side streets that ran parallel to Stevens Ave. So they've been down a lot of these roads, no pun intended, that we've been struggling with for 15, 20 years. I think one of the things that kind of needs to be done is to accept the fact that Forest Street is a major way to get people from one side of the arterial to the other, from Main Street to the high school, middle school, Canal School. That's never going to change. So trying to calm the traffic down is like having a water flow issue with a pipe and putting a smaller pipe. It just gets people more aggravated. They're going to start finding other ways around and other places to speed. So handling the traffic, managing the traffic that's going through the neighborhood is the end result that we're looking for. And one of the first things that could help with that is a stoplight, a traffic control device, not a sign, but a light that could be used to control the flow of traffic at the end of Forest Street as it dumps into Stroudwater. And I don't know if Mr. Dudley knows if that is allowable where it's a state intersection. The other thing is that taking a drive down Forest Street on any weekday, it can be like a slalom course with the fact that we've got parking on both sides of it, and neither side of the road has the width to accommodate a vehicle. So all the way down the road, there are vehicles out in the lane of travel. If you add to that a trash day and having recycling buckets on both sides of the road, or a snow day, you've got a slalom course that our school buses have to drive through. Safety equipment to get down the road. They wouldn't be able to do it if they tried. One side of Forest Street, the west side of Forest Street, talk about ADA non-compliant sidewalks. The telephone poles are literally in the middle of the sidewalk the entire way down. Public services can't even take care of the snow on the sidewalk. So the other side of the street is the only traversable sidewalk, and then during snow operations, Public Services takes care of the sidewalk, people plow their driveways out, block the walk. And that is a major thoroughfare for kids going to the middle school and high school and Canal School and all of the bus routes that take them through that way. So I think taking a step back and looking at a grander vision of how you safely get people through that neighborhood, including Haskell and Rochester, and making it a little bit cleaner and easier for people to get through would calm some of this down. Maybe making parking only on one side of Forest Street, and that way you've got two clear lanes of travel that you don't have to worry about dodging things all over the place. Those types of vertical obstructions as a method of traffic calming have proven a failure nationwide, and we should learn that lesson from Portland. But I think looking at a red light at the end, at the intersection of Stroudwater, that's probably where some of the speeding on Haskell Street comes from, is they get to the intersection at Rochester, they want to get over the arterial, and they bail, because they know it's going to take them 15 minutes just to get around the corner. And the visibility issues at that intersection are already subpar. I doubt they meet any kind of city standard or state standard. You have to pull an entire car length beyond the stop sign at the end of Forest Street to see around a fence, a 295 main turnpike sign, a DOT urban compact line, a school zone sign. You have to pull out into Stroudwater to actually be able to visibly check in both directions. And that whole intersection is a disaster. I think if we addressed that, we would get some of these other things in line. I think just taking a step back and looking through, traversing through that whole area would help a lot.
Thank you very much. Councilor Chow.
Actually, one more.
We have one more.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Dillon. I live at 222 Forest Street. And I just had a couple of questions. We actually had a meeting on Forest Street, it's probably 5 or 6 months ago now. And there was some discussion about trying to get the classification reduced through DOT, and I just was wondering, that hasn't been mentioned, if that's still a possibility or what the status might be on that.
If I may, we were asked to bring it from a major collector down to a minor collector, and we said that was fine. That it's still a DOT state aid roadway as a minor collector. It's servicing about 3,500 cars a day, whereas a major collector like Cumberland Street, for instance, is somewhere depending on where you're at, 13,500 up to over 17,000 cars a day. So that's just so it's trying to differentiate those two types of streets, and I think we can all sit here and say, oh well, Cumberland Street is a different street than Forest Street.
Yeah. And the only reason why I ask is because the thinking at that meeting was that by changing that designation, it would allow the city to do a little bit more with handling the not traffic, but speed on Forest Street, and whether that's the type of speed limit sign that indicates how fast people are going. I can't remember exactly what that's called. If that, I know when we had that temporary one about a year ago, I noticed a huge difference in the speed on Forest, just from people having to see that sign and seeing how fast they were going. So I think that's a great idea to have that radar type sign. I was a little curious though, the speed study that was done, it was done in June and July. What time of day? Or was it?
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was midday.
Go right
So the best practice on doing a speed study is that you want to have free flow of traffic. So you do not want to do that during the commute time, because the lead car determines the speed of the cars traveling on the roadway. So you want to do it in what's called a free flow condition. So one of them was at, I have it here, excuse me. Well, I just want to get that for you. Maybe it's in here.
So are you saying that less cars, the more accurate your reading?
Yes. Yes, yeah. Not necessarily. They have to be free flowing. You have to be able to determine your own speed. Whereas, I think we've all experienced it where we're traveling down a road and someone decides that they want to be going faster, and all of a sudden they're on your tailgate. Or maybe we've tailgated somebody. I have. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Right? We've all been guilty of it. It happens. So 12:15 to 1 o'clock in June one day, and then 1:35 p.m. start time in July.
Yep.
So yeah.
And I don't know, I guess the standard goes against kind of my thought or what I'm observing. I observe between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., which I think the gentleman from Haskell Street said the same thing. The more volume on Forest Street, it seems the faster people go. And I don't know if it's that group mentality where, oh, that person in front of me is going super fast, so I'm going to go super fast too. And I think the time of year makes a huge difference, because June and July there's no school. And we all know that during the school year on Forest, everyone's going to the high school, middle school, dropping their kid off, then going to work. Whereas during the summer, they're going in different directions. So I think that affects the timing affects, what that data would be. And Bill brings up a really good point. As much as I would like to see traffic slow down and having parking on both sides, intuitively that tells me it's going to slow down traffic, but I don't think it does, and it's very disorganized, and I'm surprised people haven't hit each other trying to avoid cars as they're kind of leapfrogging through. So maybe having parking only on one side would be a good thing in that situation. But I do think that the radar speed limit sign would help a lot, because again, I did notice a huge difference in speed. And I do just want to thank Councillor Reardon he sat at that stop sign at the end of Forest one day and was shocked at how many people just drove through it. But he's not even our councillor, and is, I think, a good representative for us, so thank you.
Thank you very much for your recommendations. I'm assuming Mr. Dudley is taking notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I a couple of follow-ups on that. So prior to me doing the speed study, the traffic officer from the police department had deployed the speed spy. So that was for 2 days. He had that out. So that was 24 hours a day for a couple of days. And he actually got a 85th percentile speed of 34 miles per hour also. So I think that's pretty consistent. I think, I found that it was nice to be able to say, oh, look at that. I was impressed.
Or maybe
with
your radar is broken, huh?
brand new and
strange
calibrated. So, and yeah, people do run to run stop signs, and that's unfortunate. But
Thank you.
the date in June where most of the data collected at school was in session. So, I actually rushed. I was waiting delivery on the radar gun in order to do it, and as soon as I got it, went out to do that.
Okay.
Because I was going to have somebody else do it, because we've never done speed studies with that kind of equipment, and nobody's available. And so finally somebody gave me a price, and they were like, yeah, we'll do it for $2,000, and then I found it, the high quality radar gun, not like what PD uses, but because I don't want you to think that they're overspending, because they're not. But it was around like $800 or $900, and so I figured for that kind of investment, I can do several. I can do these when the need arises. It takes a couple of hours of my time.
Thank you for your frugality, Chief.
For the record, Director, we're getting 4 for a little over 6,000 too.
Oh, we'll see. So maybe I have a little better than I thought.
My official comment is in regards to the pole-mounted radar measuring signs that tell the motorists how fast they're going. I've already done some research on those. One particular manufacturer that works with the state of Maine to give municipalities the discounted rate is $5,210 for one sign. One of their trailers, so a portable trailer, similar to what we use the portable message boards, but having one that's dedicated for the police department to be mocked up as police to move around, is $9,895. And that research was effective as of August, September of this year. So unfortunately, the technology isn't cheap. I do have staff looking into trying to find additional or different, obviously, before we bring anything like that in front of you, we need to do the 3 quotes or an RFP if it's going to be over 10,000. So try and do, as again, part of that broader picture of enforcement, trying to figure out what is the best price that we can give to the city for the technology we need to be effective, and how to find additional funds in order to pay that, realizing, again, we got limited resources.
Thank you. Mr. It's late.
I don't mean to delay the meeting. Mr. Childs asked a question about the traffic light at Forest and Stroutwater. Didn't know if Eric had an opinion on that.
I don't have an opinion. I just have results done by a bunch of engineers over the years. So that actually, I think, was the signal that Mayor Chaluta wanted signalized, if I remember right. It was that particular intersection. It doesn't meet warrants for a traffic signal. And so just so everyone knows, no matter what roadway you are on the state of Maine, in order to put in a full functioning traffic signal, you need the permission of the state traffic engineer, Steve Landry. It's the only way you can get one. So it doesn't meet warrants. We made Waterstone Development study that as a part of their project over on Larrabee Road. Even at full build-out, I think all 3 phases, or at least the first 2 phases, doesn't meet warrants. So, right, Jenny?
Correct. What we did ask the project to do was to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons on either side of Stroudwater Street to afford better passage of our pedestrians across Stroudwater Street, because at this time we don't have the traffic counts to warrant pushing them to install a traffic signal at that point. We're hoping that maybe in a future phase that could be a development if it trips the trigger, but right now that is as much as we could facilitate for that intersection.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Do you have any other comments on this? Go ahead. One last comment?
I just had a question for the chief. Have you had the experience, or do you know of the effectiveness? Because you had even mentioned earlier, kind of, you got a kid in the street, you think they're doing 50, they're really doing 27. Are those radar activated advisory signs, do you see them as an effective method? Because I, even as Councilman Rudin said, I've gone over to Stroudwater, come across the main turnpike there, and when that thing starts flashing, gone, oh, wait, gotta slow down. What is your experience in placements of, say, a $5,000 sign like that?
I have no firsthand research or knowledge of how effective they are. Myself personally, when I see them, in my role now as chief, I'm very subconscious and conscious of my speed, no matter where I'm traveling, whether I'm on duty or not. So even when I find myself in violation, and recognize that I'm slowing down. So I think that anecdotally, yes, they have an impact. And I would say that, complete assumption, but probably accurate, over 75% of the streets in this city would want one. Or the residents on those streets would want one. And finding one that's portable so that my staff can post it up for a month or so and get people used to what the speed limit is. And how do we do that? I like your approach of how do we move people safely, knowing that the problem is not going to get easier because our population is going to decrease. It's only going to increase because the population is going to increase. And our roads, because of the city's limited resources, are not going to get wider. And taking away people's residential property because you want sidewalks is not really an effective, it's certainly not a short-term improvement or plan that we might be able to impact right now. So I think that they are effective for those of us that are consciously want to be doing the right thing to begin with.
Thank you. A lot of brain power and a lot of great comments and recommendations. It is 9:40. How would we like to proceed with this meeting? I know that we had an executive
We have an item,
session.
and it's not time sensitive, so it's getting a little late. If we want to just postpone it until next meeting, that's okay.
What are the wishes of the council? Would we like to go into executive session, the committee, or postpone?
The only thing I'll add to that, a critical piece of information, with 1 minute and 13 seconds to go in the first half, the Patriots up 24-0. In case anybody wondered, okay?
I DVR'd it, and now you blew it for me.
You can hate me forever, okay?
Can I just make all of these items that we have, we joke up here every now and then, but we are sincere and serious about the traffic, and it's, Discover Downtown loves the people that go through because they stop. But on the other side, it goes in our streets. I have a cut-through street that they use off in Cumberland Street, and but sometimes, the obvious may not be the correct way of going. So with this forum, and I hopefully, if you don't hear the answer you want, we certainly have taken it under advisement, and it may change at some point in time, but to have this many, and we obviously know within the city, there are some things that are nature, the nature of our geography of our city. But I do think that each and every one of us really take it seriously, and when Ms. Dill was saying that, I wanted to see it personally, and yeah, I'm a Ward 4 representative, but I think we all represent the city, and we want what's best for our citizens, and we want them to be safe too. But we also have to move traffic through our city. So it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but it's sincere, and it is getting late, and I don't think we've really
We
have a
haven't resolved it.
resolution, right, yeah, but all I can say is if people are home, go the speed limit, you know, be cautious. And if, I was just telling Councilor Turcott, once in a while I'm in my yard, I holler at a car, and they slow down, and then next time they don't want me to holler at them, so. Oh, well, I don't encourage everyone to holler at cars, but thank you.
Yes, I don't know if I could do that and be imposing on the street, but I think a sign that would shame people, especially, you know, when I see one of those, I think, oh my gosh, someone behind me saw that I went 2 miles over. So, you know, if that is something that we can afford and move it around the city, absolutely shame them and slow them down. At this point, we do not have a resolution, and I know that people on Huntress Street are still concerned, even though the speed study was conducted a few years ago. So I look forward to your study of the city as a whole and the traffic patterns and you know, areas of concern that you can resolve with some of these tools. What are our next steps on the executive session?
We'll schedule it for next meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned. Thank you.